Kadosh Boker Or Daf Yomi Daf Masechet Zevachim Daf Pehei Amud Aleph 85 everyone. Everyone has the Gemarot.
בסדר. רואים שאתה לא בדף. אני בדף, מה זה פה?
פהי עמוד א', יש לך גמרא?
מה זה פה?
למה לקחת עברית גם?
Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara like this. It says, Mati V'Rabchia. You remember we actually finished with Tiyufta and then we said Ibayitema. So Amar Ula. We are going to be, Amar Ula is 2, 4, 6 lines down. Amar Ula. Yeah, Amar Ula. Ula comes and he says like this. Yeah, Emure Kadashim Kalim She'elan Lifne Zrikat Daman. When you have the Emurim, remember the Emurim are the limbs of the Korban, of Kadashim Kalim, that they brought them up to the Mizbeach before the sprinkling of the blood. Lo Yerdu. You should not bring them down. Shnasu Lachmo Shel Mizbeach, because it became the Lechem of the Mizbeach. Yeah? So he comes and he says, right? So he says, Amar Bizera, says a Bizera. Afana Nami Tanina, we also actually learned this, right, in a Braita. What do we learn? Nishpach Tama, v'sheyatza dam achutz, right, leklaim. If right now the blood spilled, or, right, the blood went outside of the claim, so what happens? So he says, Umahatam, just like over there, dim balizrok en lo lizrok. He says, if you wanted to come and throw the blood, you cannot sprinkle the blood. Amarta, but you still said, Imalulu yerdu. If right now it came up, you should not go down. So hacha over here, dim balizrok zorek, lo kol sheken. Should be the kol sheken then. That if you want to come and sprinkle it, right, it should be a kol sheken that if it went up, it's not going to go down. So he says, you're right. Tirgama kodshei kodashim. We're not talking about kadashim kalim. We're talking about kodshei kadashim. Remember that there's a difference between kadashim kalim and kodshei kadashim. So he says, 1 second. Pesach. The Pesach is kadashim kalimu. And if it's going to be kadashim kalim, right, it's also not yordim. So why are you telling me that then? You want to come and you want to tell me that it's davka, right, kadashim kalim, that it goes up and doesn't come down. But kadashim, he says Pesach is also kadashim kalim, and it's also going to be that it doesn't go down. So he says, Tirgema, we're talking about to do with it was done, the shchita shelo lishman. And when the shchita was done, the shelo lishman, that's what we were talking about. So he says, we learned in the Mishnah, v'kulan shalu chayin el gabe mizbeach, anytime, right, that they went up to the mizbeach, yerdu, right, they're going to go down. Hashchutin, but if it was done to the shchita, lo yerdu, it's not going to go down. My love, we're not talking about lo shna kadashim kalim, kadashim kadashim, v'lo shna kadashim kalim, that there's no difference. Meaning, whoever told you there's a difference between kadashim kalim. So he says, no. He says, ha shechutin, right? He says, this, when we're talking about the kadashim that they went up to the mizbeach, was already talking about that it was done the shchita. And therefore, mehen yirdu, sometimes they're going to be coming down, and sometimes no. So the kadashim, they're going to stay on the mizbeach. And the kadashim kalim, they come down. Says the Gemara, kulan katani. We learned all of them. Meaning when you say kulan, it's all of them. Everyone together. So he says, no, kulam is a chayim. When it says the word kulam, we're talking about the chayim, the ones which are alive. So it says them pshita, obviously. So he says no. Leolam chayim, really we're talking about right, that they're alive, right? Ubedokin sheba'ayin, we're talking about a pgam, which the pgam was dokin sheba'ayin. You remember we said that when you have a blemish, right, inside of the cataract of the eye, so we went and we said that is such a small blemish, right, that he says, Aliba de Rekiva Damar, that according to him, if they go up with such a blemish, they don't go down. So he comes and he says, why are you telling me now that we're talking about psulin? He comes and he says, Ema Seifa. Let's see the Seifa. The Seifa says, right, as follows. Ema Seifa, V'chen ola shalta chayal lerosh hamizbeach tered. An ola, that it went up when it's alive to the rosh hamizbeach, it's going to go down. Shachta b'rosh hamizbeach, if you do the shchita at the top of the mizbeach, you have shit. You're going to do avshata v'nitach b'mkoma, and you're going to come and you're going to dissect it. Ve'i psulana, if we're talking about the olah is going to be psula, but hefshet v'nituachu, you're going to tell me that you could do hefshet v'nituach. Hefshet is the skinning of the animal, and nituach you're dissecting it. V'nitach otam rachmana. The Torah says nitach ota keshera v'lo psula. Meaning, we are going to say that only the kshera needs to do hefshet v'nituach, but not the psula. Meaning, if you have an animal that was already went up pasul, they bring it the way that it is. They don't skin it, they don't dissect it. They just come, they throw it up there, and that's it. It's already up there. They're not going to do anything to it. So says the Gemara, you're right. Seifa atan liksheras. The Seifa is talking about where the animal went up when it's kosher. So since it went up and it's kosher, that's why you still have to skin it, and you have to take the emunim, right? And you have to do all these things. So says the Gemara, "My kamash malan, what's it coming to teach you?" So he says, "You know what it's coming to teach you? Tiyesh hefshet v'nituach b'rosh hamizbeach." Usually the hefshet v'nituach was done on the bottom. But the chidush that we're talking about here is that there is efshev v'nituach on the top of the mizbeach as well. Ulman damar, so according to the mandamar, en efshev v'nituach b'rosh mizbeach. Michael, what are you going to say? So achamayiskina, what are we dealing with? Kegon shaita lo kshata kosher, that it had shata kosher, v'nifsela, and it becomes pasul. For Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon here, and it's Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. Damar that he says, kevan shenizrak adam, that once the dam was sprinkled, v'urtza basar, and now, right, they want it, shafat. You have shitena ve'ora la kohanim. So therefore, they're going to skin it, and who gets the skins always? The Kohanim. Ela diktani, but rather that we learned, Keitzadose, moride te kravaim lemata umadichan. You're going to bring the kravaim on the bottom and then you're going to sprinkle it, you're going to rinse it out. So he says, Hechi navid, what are you going to do? Nekavinu befartaihu. If you're going to bring it with the perish inside, which means with the garbage inside of it, it says, Akrinona lefechatecha, right? Which means that you have to bring it when it's kosher. Hakrivenu lefechatecha means that when you're going to bring it in front of Hashem, it has to be brought properly. It can't be that it's going to be a disgrace. So he says, Ananachi coming. This is what it means. Why do you have to be madiach? So he says, because it's going to be that another coin will come, he doesn't know that it was pasul. And then what's going to happen? And then what's going to happen is that he's going to bring it. Imagine right now you have a shift. By the way, that's the worst part, when you have shifts in service. So imagine, right, you have a coin right here. He's doing the service. All of a sudden now he switches guards. Second coin comes, and what happens?
He's like in the hospital.
So that's the thing. You need that. So he says, if not, what's going to happen is a coin will come, and also he's not going to know, and then all of a sudden he's going to bring it. And by the way, you should know, even with the reports and everything, they still make mistakes. Why? Because when you're in the middle of doing something, your head is into it. So many times you don't realize. Right?
Giving the shift to the
No, many times they come and they were switching. What's a memsa melacha? It's not a melacha. You have an animal that's going up, so now you're going to have a different coin coming up and doing it. So he comes and he says, when you have a different coin coming and bring the korban, at the end of the day, if he doesn't know what's going to happen, it's going to be a problem. So he says, so what, we're going to do something that the kohanim could come and takala from it? Right? Pehemul bet, 85b. So he says, afilu hachi adifa, he says it's still going to be better. Shelo yeh kodshek shamayim mutalim kenevela. We don't want the kodshek shamayim that it's going to be like a nevela.
בגלל הנבלה שלו תהיה כך, או בגלל שזה בבית המקדש כך? כאילו הכבוד למי זה? לחיה או לבית המקדש?
בית המקדש.
בדיוק.
Yeah. So says now the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, says Rabbi Chia bar Abba, right? He says like this, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Bai Rabbi Yochanan, ask Rabbi Yochanan, Emurei Kodashim Kalim she'elan lifnei zrikat daman yerdu or lo yerdu. So when we have now the emurim of Kadashim Kalim, right? Remember the limbs of the Kadashim Kalim, they brought them up, right? So if you brought them up before the Zrikat Daman, do they bring them down or not? So Amar le Rabbi Ami v'tibay lach mi'ilah. He says, 1 second, why don't you ask about mi'ilah? Right? Mi'ilah is that you're not allowed to benefit from Kodshim. So Amar le, he says, mi'ilah, for sure that's not a question. Tizrikahu de kabayle, right? He says Zrika is going to be koveat. So he says, mi'ilah, kikamibayle, so when do we need it? By yiridah. What does it mean yiridah? Which means if you need to bring it down from the Mizbeach or not. Okay? So he comes now and he says like this. So he says, upashit, right? So we're going to come and we're going to be poshet, lo yerdu. They do not go down. Ve'em ba'em mi'ilah, and there's no problem of mi'ilah. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak matniachi. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak comes and he teaches like this. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. By Rabbi Yochanan asks, Emurei kadashim kalim she'elan al gavi, right? Lifnei zikat amen. Yes, when do they have mi'ilah or not? Amar le Rabbi Ami says, remember, tabelach yiridah. Right, so Amar le Yirida lo kamibale, for sure Yirida is not the question. Why? Because it already became the lechem of the mizbeach. Ki kamibale, when is the question to do with mi'ilah? Upashitachi lo yirdu ve'em by mi'ilah. So this, basically the question was like this. We've got two halachot, which actually come out to be the same at the end. We have a question about mi'ilah, and we have a question about Yirida. Yirida means that once it already came out to the mizbeach, do you bring it down or not? So the first braita was, the question was to do with Yirida, and then we said, why are you asking about Yirida? Ask about mi'ilah. So he says, no, Milah for sure was not a question, right? He says, why? But for sure you need to do the Zrika, and therefore Milah was not good. So what was the question? Yirida. So we paskin, right? There's no Yirida and there's no Milah. Okay, lo Yirdu, right? Velo ve'em Milah. The second one was the exact opposite. What do you mean the exact opposite? Right? We asked about Milah and we didn't ask about Yirida. So you asked, why don't you ask about Yirida? So he comes and he says, no. Yirida for sure was not a question. Why? Because once it went up there, it became the bread of Mizbeach. Once it's the bread of Mizbeach, you're not going to bring it down. Right? Once you brought up the Korban, it because Ki'ilu, you remember that we spoke about that the Mizbeach is Mekadesh eta Korban. What does that mean? It purifies it. That means even though it was not good, it's like a mikveh, right? Very good, right? So what does that mean? So he comes and he says, so because of that, he comes and he says that there's not going to be a problem, not of the Yirida and not of the Me'ilah. Right? He says like this, V'ilu lo haya psulan. So he comes and he says like this, if you're going to tell me right now that they didn't have the psul in the Kodesh, Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, lo yakshir Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva comes and he doesn't say that, ela bedukin sheba'ain, poel uksharim, right? Uksharim be'ofot. There's going to be kosher in the ofot, right? Vehu, right? Shekadam shekdeshan et muman, that he came and he made the ekdesh before the muman. Yeah? Right? Umodeh Rabbi Akiva be'olah nekeva. So he comes and he says like this. He says, Modeh Rabbi Akiva by Olat Nekeva, Techshekadam Muma Legdesha Damya. That it's Ki'ilu, you were Magdim, the Egdesh, the Mum to the Egdesh. You remember we said that what came first? If the Mum came before the Egdesh, so therefore it's Ki'ilu, there's no greater Mum than that. So he comes and he says, right, every Olat Be'ema needs to be a Zachar, and this one's going to be a Nekeva. So by Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and he asks the following question: Yesh nirba be'ofot or nirba be'ofot? Does there exist a concept of nirba by birds? You remember we spoke about rovea nirba by animals. What about by ofot? Mi amar, do we say mina behema, right, from the behema? So he says, right, leotzi et rovea vet nirba. So he comes and he says, to come out the rovea and the nirba. Kol hecha. Because we say as long as the ita brovea ita nirba, as long as you have the rovea, you have the nirba. Kolecha deleta brovea leta nirba. Or maybe I'm going to say hare nevda bo avira. The avira was done. Meaning like this: by the off, right? By the off, you don't have the rovea, you do have the nirba, right? So do I say that in order for you to have it, you need the rovea and nirba, or do I not say that? That's the question. Okay. So he comes and he says like this. He says, right? Amar Rabba says, Tashma, we're going to try to bring a proof. He says, Rabbi Akiva says, right? Machshir b'ba'alei mumin. He says that it's going to be kosher b'ba'alei mumin. And if you're going to tell me, Nachshir nami b'din ba. So obviously we're going to learn from here that by the off, there is a nirba, right? That means there does exist the concept of nirba by the ofot, and it's going to make it pasul. So Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak, Afanan Nitanian, we also learned it actually. We learned it because it said, "Anilba v'muktzah v'neva v'etananu mechid v'tumdum adreginos kulam etamim begadim beta belia." What does that mean? It's like a nevela. Shema mina. So we learn from here the fact that we learned the off by the nirba, right? So therefore, you see from here that it's also going to be pasul, even though there's no rovea, there's only nirba. Okay, so he says. Rabbi Chanan, right? Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim, right? So therefore, that's how we actually finish off by saying that it does apply even by the nirba, by the birds. Now we have the next part, which is Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. He comes and he says like this: "My kamashmalan, what does it mean? Come to teach you right now. If you want, you could say Masechet kamashmalan. It's coming to teach you the story because there it was a story about that he was doche, right? All the baalei mumin from the mizbeach. So either you tell me the story. If you want, you could say, what does it mean doche? Kilach meaning derech kavod. Meaning, but if not, then it's going to be a bizayon. So therefore, what he had to do was he had to do it in such a way that you're taking it down, but not mifarhesia. You know, many times you could come and you could take somebody down, but do you do it publicly or do you do it privately? So publicly means right. Which one? Yeah. So publicly is everybody sees. Privately, you're doing it, machorei agav, right? So that's something else, right? So he comes and he says like this: "Mikashem she'imalu lo yirdu." So Amar Ula says, Lo shanu ela right shelo mashla b'naur. That's only if it didn't start the fire. But once it starts the fire, ya'alu, it goes up again. What does that mean? You remember we said that if it already came down, meaning one more time, it wasn't supposed to go up, but it already went up. If it went up, it doesn't go down. What happens if it already went down? It doesn't go back up again. But what happens if the fire already got on it? So if the fire already started eating it, consuming it, so then it goes back up. So Rav Mari matni areisha. Rav Mari taught us on the reisha. Rav Chanina Masura he taught us on the seifa. Hatzamo v'agedim v'kanayim v'telafayim bizman shem mechubarin ya'alu. Whenever we're talking about the bones, the sinus, right, the horns or the hooves, right, when they're going to be mechubar to the goof of the korban, they go up to the korban. They go up to the mizbeach. Parshu, if they separate, they don't go up. Amar Ula says, when do they not go up? Only if lo mashla b'ayin ha'ur. But if it's mashla b'ayin ha'ur, ya'alu, they will go up. So man dematni seifa, whoever taught it on the seifa is going to be kolchken on the reisha. But the one that taught on the reisha, on the seifa, we're not going to say that. Why? Because they're not supposed to be burnt. Meaning these things are not supposed to go up to the mizbeach. So the fact they're not going to the mizbeach, so therefore we don't have these halachot. We're just going to do the mishnah and then we'll continue tomorrow. It says the mishnah, ve'im alu yirdu. Right? Ve'elu, there are certain other things that if they do have to the mizbeach, they do come down. What are we talking about? Basar kodesh kodeshim v'basar kodeshim kalim, umotara omer, or the motara omer, u'shtei alechem, lechem aparim, u'sherei menachot ve'ketoret. So these are all things that if they did go up to the mizbeach, they do go down. Okay? Now here we're talking about that even if it's going to be kosher completely, right? But it has nothing to do with the mizbeach. So we're going to have to speak about that. So Tanu Rabbanan, we learned it, it says, the next part of the Mishnah, Hatzemer, Shebirashei kvasim, the tzemer, the wool which is going to be on the heads of the kvasim, or the se'ar, shebzekan tiyashim, v'yatzamo v'agidim, v'kranim v'ledafraim, b'zman shem mechubarim ya'alu, they're going to go up, shenemar, v'yiktira kohen et hakol, parshu, once they separate, lo ya'alu, they don't go up. Why? Shenemar, v'asita olotecha, habasar, ve'adam. What does that mean, habasar ve'adam? From this pasuk, it's mashma, only the basar and the dam goes up to the mizbeach, and not the other chalakim. So therefore, obviously, if it's not the other chalakim, and the other chalakim did go up, you're going to come and you're going to take it down.